afternoon's webinar, here hosted by the Office of Economic Development here in the city of San Jose. My name is Vic Farley, and I'm going to be your host and talk you through the slide deck that we have here to give you the detail on the America Rescue Plan and ask the question, what's in it for small business? I expect this presentation to take somewhere in the region of 20 minutes, and may go to 30 minutes as I go through some of the detail, but I intend to leave as much as 60 minutes, an hour, for the purposes of questions and answers. So you are very welcome to raise any questions and use the Q&A function that we have here on the Zoom call. I'm very pleased to announce that we are now offering these webinars in languages other than English. So if you would prefer to listen to simultaneous translation in either Spanish, Vietnamese, or Chinese, you can do so by accessing, by clicking on the globe icon at the bottom of your screen, where you'll see a number of icons. And if you click on that icon, you will then be given an option of either Vietnamese, Spanish, or Chinese. And if you would prefer to have simultaneous translation, please click on one of those boxes. I will give everyone, say, 30 seconds to make that choice, make that decision, to click on the icon and to move into the room where you will receive simultaneous translation. I should say that if you would prefer to come out of that room and listen again in English, you can do so. You can exit that room and you can also go back into the room. It's your choice. We're trying to offer flexibility here to enable people for whom English is not your first language the opportunity to listen to this presentation, and also importantly to be able to answer a question that can be then translated and I get the opportunity to provide you with an answer so far as possible. In terms of our disclaimer, I should say that this webinar is for information purposes only, and always consult with a financial or professional advisor on critical issues that impact on your business. Thank you. So today's webinar is structured in the following. I'll give you a quick introduction as to what the America Rescue Plan is, but we really want to get into the detail on grants, loans, and tax credits. This is at the heart of what's in it for small business. It's essentially access to money. I'm going to offer you a way of looking at 2021 by planning ahead, using financial quarters to understand what is the best fit for you when you look at these grants, loans, and tax credits. I'll give you an example using PPP and ERTC. PPP is Paycheck Protection Program, and ERTC is the Employee Retention Tax Credit. Both are very important for small businesses this year in 2021. And finally, I'll offer you some top tips for business, some sort of takeaways for you to consider as you leave the webinar and to think about how you want to take any of these issues forward. And then there'll be the Q&A and finally some links so that if you want to read all these documents at your leisure, you can do so by clicking on these links where all the reference sources are. So what was the value of the America Rescue Plan that was recently agreed and signed by the President? It was essentially valued at a very large sum of $1.9 trillion. And you can see here on this table, on this infographic, how each color represents a different type of program that was agreed. And you can see that the big colors here, such as the $1,400 economic impact payments, were there and are being processed at the moment by the IRS and Treasury and being sent to households across the United States. State and local government is being directly funded. And significantly as well, you can see other areas of programs. But the ones we're going to look at today are actually the smaller ones in terms of budget. We're going to be looking at ERTC here at the top and small business here, the light blue. These are the two areas that we're going to focus on. And I will make reference just below here to the expanded child tax credit and earned income tax credit as well, because I'm sure that will be significant for many people who are self-employed or sole proprietors to take into consideration as they plan 2021. But this just gives you a very simple, straightforward overview of the big components in dollar numbers of what was in the America Rescue Plan. So the essence of answering the question, what's in it for small business, is to understand what the new grants, loans, and tax credits may mean for you. And I'm going to be concentrating on 6 areas in the course of the next 10 to 15 minutes. The first one is a quick update on the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. Then we'll look at the EIDL Advance, catching up on the Paycheck Protection Program, the recently announced changes, looking in detail at the Employee Retention Tax Credit, and then we'll cover the new Restaurant Revitalization Grant, and finally what I've termed the other stuff, the unemployment insurance and tax credit changes, again of significance for the self-employed and sole proprietor. So this is the focus essentially of what's in it for small business. So let's look at EIDL. Essentially, 2 things have changed here as a result of the recent changes in legislation. One is the program is now extended. You can apply for an EIDL loan up to December the 31st, 2021. So for the rest of this calendar year, this program is available for business to apply. Probably of greatest significance is that the loan size has been increased from $150,000 to $500,000. And this comes into effect on April the 8th. That is when we anticipate that the SBA, the Small Business Administration, the federal government agency responsible for this loan program, will be going live and operational and accepting applications at the higher value. Importantly, existing applications, if you've already applied in recent months, will be automatically considered for the new maximum limits. You will not need to apply again. Existing COVID-19 borrowers will be able to request an increase. Many businesses across California, in particular, secured an EIDL loan in 2020. And if you did, you're eligible to apply for an increased amount. The SBA will be reaching out to you via email. And finally, there will be a repayment holiday available. This is primarily a deferment, not a forgiveness of a loan amount, but it's an important cushion in the course of the next 12 months if you're using this loan for active working capital purposes. So that's the EIDL loan, and it's a key loan for working capital for business. Moving on, we now have the EIDL Loan Advance. Now, this is different. This is a non-repayable grant directly to businesses valued up to $10,000. And the SBA, again, the Small Business Administration, is going to reconsider all applications received in 2020. A number of businesses applied last year and heard nothing. A number of businesses applied thinking they were going to receive $10,000, but received a much smaller sum of money. Well, all of these applications are now being reviewed by the SBA. And so if you have applied, you must check your email for updates. And the SBA is intending to prioritize who they look at first. And essentially, the first priority are the businesses that received, as I was saying, less than $10,000. And then the second priority are the businesses who applied but have received no funding. If you want to know more, and you can go directly to the SBA at their customer service center, and here is the telephone number and the email if you wish to ask questions and check on the status of your application. So this is a non-repayable grant, eligible for small businesses to apply to. There is eligibility criteria here to check. But fundamentally, if you applied in the past 12 months when this program was open to you, you will be reconsidered automatically. And that's a key change as a result of the America Rescue Plan coming into effect. Let's move on to look at Paycheck Protection Program. In an earlier webinar, I walked everyone through the recent changes for sole proprietors and the self-employed, that shift to looking at the calculation based on gross receipts, gross income. That's a very important change for the sole proprietor and the self-employed. But what we've discovered now, of course, which is very good news, is that the president has signed off on a deadline extension for the Paycheck Protection Program by a further 2 months through to May 31st, 2021. And also giving banks a further 30 days, which in effect takes us to June 30th, to process an application. And the aim here is to give businesses as much time to make their application and banks enough time to process that application. Because a number of banks have struggled with ensuring that their systems are live and up to date, particularly for the sole proprietor and the self-employed, when looking at the calculation driven by gross receipts. Also, it's important to note that PPP will not be treated as taxable income, and that's significant. And finally, there can be no double dipping. And what is meant by double dipping as a term is that you cannot claim more than one federal stimulus program, such as PPP, and another one for the same dates. The dates have to be such that you can only claim one federal stimulus program on the same day. And that's very important in terms of planning 2021. So that's the PPP loan update. Another 2 months and a further month for banks to process those applications. There is still funding left in PPP, but it may be that one scenario here is that there won't be all the money till the end of May. And therefore, my advice to business is don't delay. Check with your bank to see when they are accepting those applications, particularly if you're a sole proprietor. And if there is any form of delay by that bank, check out a second option, a fallback online, using the different search options that you have to find an alternative lender if you feel that your existing lender is unable to process your application. Now let's move on from grants and loans to tax credits. And this is a significant change. The employee retention tax credit, essentially free money, is now extended to all 4 quarters of 2021, potentially worth $28,000 per employee, based on $7,000 as a maximum per quarter. The way this will be done is to compare 2021 gross receipts to 2019. It's assumed that your business was running well, running normally pre-COVID, which is why 2019 is used, and that your business has been impacted by COVID and continues to be impacted in 2021, and therefore you may be able to claim, depending on the eligibility criteria, an ERTC tax credit for each of the 4 quarters. But you cannot claim both a PPP and an ERTC in the same quarter. So it's very important here to understand how you manage those dates. And I'll come on to explain that when I give an example shortly. You can, though, and another important change is look to retrospectively go back and claim for 2020 and this year. So if you did not make a claim for ERTC in 2020, you can still do so today. And that's an important measure to ensure that you can claim that credit for your business if you retained employees on your payroll in the course of quarters 3 and 4 of 2020. And finally, ERTC is non-taxable income. Again, that makes it free money for your business. So let's look at how we plan this out. The important thing is, how to maximize your opportunity as a business owner to claim both the Paycheck Protection Program and the Employee Retention Tax Credit. And what I've created here, you can see on this table, this spreadsheet, is a worked example. It's a very simple example just to illustrate and explain the importance of claiming both, but understanding your dates. So I'm going to talk you through this, and this spreadsheet will be available as part of the information that you have that we will send you once this webinar has been completed, so that you have a copy of the slide deck and the spreadsheet. So what we have here is that we've organized as a business owner our actual numbers, our actual gross receipts for 2019. And I've a simple example here that this is in thousands of dollars. So in the first quarter of 2019, the business generated $100,000. In quarter two, 120,000. In quarter three, the same number, 120,000. And in quarter four, it was a very good quarter. It was the best quarter of the year for the business. It generated $150,000. And this was pre-COVID. The business was well established. It was operating with a firm customer base. And these were the gross receipts for that business. Then COVID impacts from the middle of March 2020. So the impact is severe on this business. You can see a decline here from $100,000 down to $80,000 for the same quarter. And as shelter in place took effect, the business was largely closed and could generate only $12,000 in quarter two. And then in quarter three, as the shelter in place restrictions eased slightly and the business was able to trade more, it was able to generate more income, 40,000. And then by the fourth quarter of last year, it generated $75,000. So here are the two financial years, the actual numbers as an example. We then measure the decline in income of gross receipts. So we can see in comparing quarter one to the 2 years, 2019 to 2020, the decline was 20%. In the following quarter, the decline was 90%. And there you can see the numbers comparing the quarter to the quarter declines. Now, these are very important in knowing when you're going to claim PPP and what you're eligible to claim as well for the ERTC. So we just use this as an example now for the year we're in. Here is a forecast. We're working on a forecast, not the actual. So for quarter one, we think that this business will have, this business will have $60,000 rising to 90 as the economy reopens, as we're now going through that reopening phase, a stable cash flow of 90, and then hitting a peak in the last quarter of 120. The business improves over the course of this year. But compared to 2019, gross receipts remain lower. And here you can see the percentage decline of 40%, 30%, 30%, and 20%. Now, what this means in effect is you're able to claim two PPP, apply for two PPP loans. And the example here was that in quarter two of 2020, last May, April, May, June, the business was able to secure a loan, a PPP loan of $50,000. And that was based on this payroll calculation. And again, this business has just claimed again a round two based on the same payroll, and that will generate a PPP loan value of $50,000. Below that are the employee retention tax credits. So for 2020, you can only claim in quarters 3 and 4 on the basis that the business had lost 50% of the gross receipts total for the equivalent quarter in 2019. And you can see that in this example, both in quarter 3 and quarter 4, the business had lost up to more than 50% plus of gross receipts in each quarter. and could therefore make a claim which was worth the equivalent of $5,000 per employee per quarter to a ceiling of $10,000. And that has a value of $40,000. Now for 2021, the eligibility criteria have become more generous. And so provided that the change in gross receipts is 20% or above, then you can claim the employee retention tax credit. And based on a maximum ceiling of $7,000 per quarter, you can see that this is worth $28,000 in each of the quarters. Now, the important thing to point out here is that you cannot claim the ERTC in the same quarter as you claim the PPP. So here we are claiming PPP in 2021 in quarter one, which is why there is no ERTC here. But then we have the loan forgiveness period within that quarter. So let's just say the example that the loan forgiveness period ends on March 29th. Then from April the 1st onwards, you can claim the ERTC because they are separate quarters. And this is the key to understanding your financial planning when it comes to maximizing the value of the PPP and the ERTC. So if we then look across the 4 quarters, we can see the respective value of the ERTC to the PPP. Now that's a lot to take in. There's a lot of jargon, but essentially, if you get the planning right and you claim the loan for you apply for and claim the loan forgiveness for the PPP within the financial quarters, that gives you then the freedom to apply for the ERTC in the other financial quarters. And the overall benefit to this business as an illustration of being able to maximize the claim by financial quarter is that this business could claim up to $224,000 of non-taxable income for 2020 and 2021. So this is just an illustration of an example of how businesses can think about the year they're in now, 2021, and how to look at the importance of financial planning by each quarter to ensure that the PPP loan forgiveness stays within a financial quarter so that you can then ensure that you claim your ERTC in subsequent different financial quarters. I'd be very happy to take any questions on this, because obviously many businesses will be thinking differently about what they want to claim and how they want to claim. If you want to know more about this, I'm very pleased to say that the National Federation of Business, the NFIB, will be hosting a detailed webinar on April the 14th to really get into the granular detail of ERTC and PPP management. And this is really at the heart of answering that question, what's in it for small business? It's being able to take advantage of both these programs, the PPP loan and the ERTC, over these 4 quarters of 2021. Now, what was new in the American Rescue Plan was a program to revitalize restaurants. We anticipate this program will be launched by the SBA in the middle to late of April. We don't yet have detailed information. But the first thing to let you know is that although it's called a restaurant revitalize program, it will include other types of businesses. Essentially, this is the list here of different businesses, all within that umbrella word restaurant, that may be eligible to apply for the revitalization grant. We estimate here in the city of San Jose that we have around 3,000 businesses that may fall under one of these headings here. So it is our intention to ensure that we promote this new grant program as soon as we have the detailed information available to us to ensure that you're able to apply. Now, what are the important terms that we know of that will be contained in the revitalization grant program? The maximum ceiling that any business that's eligible to apply that can claim through that grant is $10 million. And it's based on a comparison of your gross receipts in 2020 and how they were impacted by COVID when compared to 2019. Now, the key requirement reading through the documents is that your business, if you're a restaurant, must have had a decline greater than 45% of gross receipts in 2020. Many restaurants were closed for a great deal of the year. So this isn't based on a quarter by quarter assessment. This is based on the entire calendar year of the business from January 1, 2020 through to December 31st, 2020. Applications will be prioritized based on that decline. And so those businesses that experienced a 90% plus decline in gross receipts are believed to be able to apply first. There's also going to be a carve out of budget for restaurants whose annual gross receipts are under $500,000. And this is very important for our smallest businesses here in the city. Regulations and launch date are not confirmed, but the media reports indicate that that's likely to be in mid to late April. Now, interestingly, funding from the EIDL and the Ertc will not be counted towards 2020 revenue. So if you received a PPP loan, if you received an EIDL loan, that will not be counted. But if you received a PPP loan and a grant, here a restaurant grant, it cannot exceed the 2019 total gross receipts. So what that really means in effect, when you look at this, the PPP loan will be taken out of the calculation of your gross receipts. So if you have a PPP loan, you won't get funded again for the same amount. It will, and that's really to ensure, in a sense, that the maximum amount that a restaurant can receive is the equivalent to what those gross receipts were in 2019, and that the federal government isn't giving you a lift above that 2019 ceiling. Those are the key points, but when we get the published regulations, we'll be able to go into that in much more detail. But this is the new program that was specifically designed in the America Rescue Plan for the restaurant industry to revitalize it and to get it back on its feet. And as you can see here in the city of San Jose, as the county has begun to relax the criteria as we moved into orange tier last week, restaurants are now able to offer up to 50% occupancy internally, as well as maintain their outdoor dining presence. Okay, let me quickly cover the other stuff. These are essentially the other payments, taxes, and credits, and it's particularly relevant for the sole proprietor and self-employed. Many of you I know, I'm sure, will have been receiving the $1,400 for adults and any dependent. And in addition to that, there's been an expansion of the child tax credit. If you have children, you will be able to receive a tax credit. There's also an extension of federal unemployment insurance, which is very important if you're a sole proprietor or self-employed. And the first $10,200 of unemployment benefits received in 2020 will mean that will be excluded from your income tax. And this exclusion is retroactive, applying to unemployment insurance benefits received last year. And it's largely designed to reduce the issue of any surprise tax bills, but will only apply to individuals with incomes below $150,000. So here really are the sort of other components that a business owner should take into account in understanding the changes that are being brought forward by the America Rescue Plan. The stimulus payment, the child tax credit, the expansion of federal unemployment insurance, and the exemption of $10,200 in your tax return. Finally, I just wanted to raise one other issue, which is a number of businesses have contacted the city in recent days looking to expand, and what loan program is out there that is on offer through banks and lenders. And the SBA have a program known as 7A and 504. And this offers up to $5 million in loan. It can be matched with other bank loans with rates that are competitive, but can be as low as 3.75%, with long repayment terms, typically 20 years, but can be longer, and only requires 10% collateral. And within the America Rescue Plan, it confirmed that the repayment holiday that was retained in 2020 is extended further. So it offers you a competitive option if you're looking to generate a long-term loan for expansion purposes, such as the purchase of equipment or an asset such as the property you occupy. Now, this may be only relevant to a small number of businesses, but it's an important time to think about as your business reopens or as you think ahead how you want to take that business forward as part of your planning. You may be considering an expansion. And if you are, look at this online and check out and compare it to other offers that you may receive or that you wish to investigate further so that you've got a good choice in front of you. So let me finally leave you before we get into the Q&A with my top tips for you. Have your financials organized by quarters for 2019, 2020, and the year we're in now, 2021. Claim your loan forgiveness late in 2020 using dates within a quarter. That way you can see whether you'll be eligible for the Ertc and know when to claim and when not to claim your loan forgiveness. Check all your quarters this year against 2019. Review your working capital needs. And if you're looking to expansion or acquisition of an asset, as I've just mentioned, look at the SBA's 7A and 504 program. And throughout all this, seek professional free business advice from a San Jose-based organization. And last but not least, plan now. This year is very important in terms of your business, how it recovers, and its prospects for the longer term. So look at all of these options, be it a grant, a loan, or a tax credit, and create the right mix for you and the timing that you need to consider as you plan this year out. That takes us really to the Q&A, and I can see there are already 14 questions here in the Q&A. Let me just quickly try and work my way through them for you, answering as many questions as I can. And where I can't answer that question, there will be an email address at the bottom of the presentation that I'll return to that allows you to follow up if you want to ask another question, or if you need more information to assist you in your consideration of the issues that I've explained just now. So, is this session to be posted online for later? Yes, it will be. Yes, we will be posting this on our YouTube channel. And for all participants today, when we send you an email, we'll also provide you with the link so that you're able to go directly on to review the content of this webinar. Yes, it will be available in English. Yes, that's from Josephine. A question from an anonymous attendee. Is this applicable to a small home rental landlord business? Well, each program here has different eligibility criteria. And I don't think many of the programs are in fact eligible to small home rental landlord businesses. When this question has come up before, we've asked whether that landlord, how that landlord is claiming income on their tax return. And the answer here is essentially, if you have Schedule C income on your tax return, that makes you eligible for some of these programs. If your income is Schedule E, that largely means you're ineligible to participate in these programs. But you do have to look at each program in turn. So for the example of the Employee Retention Tax Credit, ERTC, if you're a landlord who employs people in your business, you may very well be entitled to make that claim, but you will need to check with either your payroll provider CPA, or tax preparer to look at the fine print with the application of ERTC. Jason asks, can I download the presentation as a PDF or a PowerPoint? It should be a PDF when it comes out to you. Question, can you please explain PPP double dipping again? Not sure what you meant. So what that essentially means is that you can claim your PPP at any point. This is the loan forgiveness. Okay, you've made your application for PPP, it's been approved, you've received the money, and you've spent that money. At least 60% of that money has been spent on payroll, and the other 40% on other items. And then you decide the 8-week period that you want to claim for loan forgiveness purposes. And you want to do that within a financial quarter. So if we take the example of the quarter we're in, you will want to claim that 8 weeks, if possible, within Q1, up to March 30th. You will not be able to claim the employee retention tax credit for the same period. That's avoiding the double dipping. So you can't claim more than one federal stimulus program in the same day, same quarter. That's essentially what it means. You cannot claim twice for 2 different programs for the same period. For ERTC, what can you do if you first opened a business in January 2020? There is a way of making the claim, and it's in the regulations. I don't have the regulations in front of me, but I will look that up. So for the anonymous attendee that asked me that question, if you want to come back and leave and send an email to the email address at the end of this presentation, I'll be able to send you the link to look at the detail. And I think you will need to go and speak to either your tax preparer or CPA to look at the kind of detail of this, or go to an organization like the Small Business Development Center. Okay, Paul has asked the question about PPP. I applied for the PPP with my bank twice, and I've been rejected because the email claims insufficient evidence of operating. And secondly, sole proprietor Schedule C, okay, tax returns. However, both times I did, okay. I would advise you here, I can understand why you're frustrated and confused, as you say. I would go and reach out to the Small Business Development Center now. I'll leave you their email address. Again, it's on one of the slides I'll return to, Paula. And I think you would benefit from a conversation with them to check the material you've got, and they will be able to advise you on a lender that you would be able to apply to for a PPP. I can see why that would be extremely frustrating, yes. The good news in this conversation is you've got this 2-month period to get it resolved, sorted and agreed. You haven't lost out as a result of the ending of the program as it was originally for March 31st yesterday. You've now can go all the way to the end of May. I was looking today at different lenders who are offering a second round PPP loans. One that you may want to look at is Lendio, Lendio. That looked an interesting one. I'm not here to recommend one over another, but I was just looking to see who was currently accepting round 2 PPP loans for new customers. Oh, good question from Ashley. Would a vending machine business fall under the restaurant program? Again, I think the short answer is I don't know, because I think we'll have to look at the technical regulations when they're published. What the SBA have done in recent times when they've had this type of grant program is they rely on something called the NAICS code, N-A-I-C-S, and that's a national industry code. And your business will have one. Every business that's registered and paying tax will have an NAIC code, and it's on your tax return. If you're not sure what that is, you can actually search online through the SBA, and I would be happy to forward you a link if you're unable to find it by searching online, and you can check to see what your NAIC code is for your vending machine business. You can see that the federal government is trying to be very broad in its interpretation of what a restaurant here may represent. But I genuinely don't know whether a vending machine business will be eligible or not. I'm sorry about that, but we'll follow that up with me, Ashley. Okay. Kim has asked the question, I've not applied for any fund in the past year due to COVID affecting my business. Can I still have an opportunity to apply for what was offered in 2020 and 2021? The short answer is yes, you can apply for a PPP loan because you've got a period up to May 30th. If you haven't received one last year, you're potentially able to claim 2 PPP loans, but you're going to have to be very quick in making your application. With ERTC, again, if you have a payroll and you employ people, yes, you can look at this retrospectively at Q3 and Q4 of last year, as well as all of this year. So those are the main advantages, in a sense, you've currently got, Kim, in looking at what you may be eligible for. And you will have to look at and read the documents to check that you are eligible and your business would be able to apply. And again, if you're unsure about what some of the rules mean, again, I would recommend that you contact one of our free business support organizations here in the city. The Small Business Development Center is very familiar with the rules attached to PPP and ERTC, and I would recommend you contact them. But there are other organizations as well that do a very good job too, and you can find those on a website called businessownersspace.com, and there are all the organizations listed that provide free business advice for you here in the city of San Jose. Elias asked the question, are owner employees eligible for an ERTC? Great question. That would depend on how you've structured your payroll. If you have a traditional payroll, the answer is yes. So I think you've got to reach out to your CPA or tax preparer or payroll company and check that, because the ERTC has very specific rules that define your eligibility, and you may be successful here. If you want to follow up with me separately, I would have to research that for you. I don't have an answer immediately in front of me. It's a great question. Same question about starting a business in early 2020. Can you claim the Restaurant Revitalization Grant Program? We won't know that till the detailed rules are published, which we expect to see in the next 2 to 3 weeks. You can claim the ERTC, I should note. If you were employing staff in your business during 2020 that was impacted by COVID and you meet that kind of loss of gross receipts test, then you can claim that if that applies to you as well. Okay, an anonymous question. If a company's PPP loan does not squarely fit within 1 quarter, but say enters into a few weeks or a month of a second quarter, is the company disqualified from ERTC for the entire quarter? Yeah, great question. And I think the answer is yes, it is disqualified, because the ERTC works exclusively on a quarter basis, not a date basis. So you can't have your loan forgiveness. And I think a lot of people will be frustrated that they completed their loan forgiveness documents in good faith months ago to ensure that they had that loan forgiven so that there was no debt. And now, of course, the rules have changed in relation to the application on ERTC. But I would stress, check with a CPA or tax preparer on that point. And in the references on the slide deck at the end, when I come back to that, are all the links if you want to read the documents yourself. But the way this is structured is, yes, you have to have the dates within the quarter. If they stretch into another quarter, then you lose the ability to claim that quarter on the ERTC. Any fund grant from, next question, any fund grant from any government levels to make up for any shortfall of rent? Okay, so the place to claim, in a sense, for grants is either you have made already a claim for Eidl Advance, you'll be hearing from the SBA. If you haven't, then the only place really at the moment is if you claim for something I didn't discuss today, which we presented in an earlier webinar 2 weeks ago, which was the California Relief Fund, which is a business grant program for California-based businesses. But the deadline completed yesterday. That's the difficult one. So there's no active California Relief Grant program for a new applicant. Only existing applicants are currently being considered for an award. You're going to have to look at the kind of PPP ERTC as your kind of main way of, in a sense, finding money that gives you a very good chance of never having to repay it because of the way you use it, or considered free money. If you're looking at working capital to make up, to really get your business back on its feet, then look at the Eidl criteria, and you can go directly to the Small Business Administration to do that. Okay, another question, if you already applied for PPP forgiveness but no decision is made, is it possible to withdraw the application and redo it? I believe it is, but you're going to have to talk to your bank and talk to the lender to do that. And I would again just check with an organization like the Small Business Development Center if you've got any doubt, because you are in control of those dates. So I would reach out to the lender and have that conversation immediately. Ramraj has asked, typically PPP loan forgiveness periods are 8 weeks or 24 weeks and don't align, that's true, and don't align with quarterly timelines. How do you separate them based on quarters? Is it possible to separate based on months, weekly basis? Well, currently the rules and regulations read you cannot separate weeks and months. So you're going to have to fit within that quarter. And I suspect many businesses will find that they're unable to neatly fit that. I can see why that will be very frustrating on round 1 PPP loans from last year. But if you've had a round 2 PPP loan this year in 2021, wait until later in the year. I believe you have up to 10 months to complete the loan forgiveness form once you've received the loan. Then you can see how your business is performing in these quarters. And if you can fit it in the minimum time period of 8 weeks, that gives you the maximum opportunity to claim the ERTC in subsequent quarters. I can see why it's not going to always work for people, but I wanted to show you the opportunity and the potential of looking at ERTC and PPP together. So I think my general advice, Ramraj, is look to see if you can claim your PPP within an 8-week period, within a quarter, and leave the forgiveness period right to close to the end of the time that you're allowed, so that you can judge how your business is performing. How do you apply for ERTC, says Christopher? Good question. And the answer is it's directly to IRS, normally through your tax preparer, your CPA, or your payroll company. And businesses that have quite a substantial payroll or employ lots of people will often use a payroll company. And those payroll companies will do this calculation and submit the forms for you to IRS. And there are specific form numbers. And again, I will leave you the link to the IRS that will take you to the forms that will allow you to download it and see what information you have to provide in order to claim your ERTC. Sun has asked the question, my 2019 income tax has been lost. Can I still apply for a PPP loan? You can apply if the loan is under $150,000 because you do not have to provide that level of detail. In some lenders, most lenders actually now do ask for it though. So I think if it's lost, can you not contact the IRS and get a copy of it? Or can you not contact or find a copy of it with a tax preparer or a CPA? I think if you can obtain your 2019 tax return, then I think you're good to go. If you haven't completed a 2019 tax return, then I think it's in your interest to do so and get it completed now to enable you to apply for both the PPP loan and the ERTC. If you've got a problem, Sun, with the whole concept of a tax return, again, please reach out to one of our free business advice organizations here in the city, and they would help you address those sorts of problems and issues that you may be facing. Ellie has asked a question about the Idl Loan Advance. Will new applications be accepted that do not fall into these priorities? At present, the answer is no. But we do not know yet how much of the budget will be absorbed by the SBA in meeting the existing commitments. So it could be that they do reopen this process and allow for new applications. But at present, they are not asking for new applications. Guillermo has asked, how can I apply for additional EIDL funds? You received a loan last year, but those funds are depleted now. Right. Either you wait for the SBA to contact you, or you can go directly to the SBA now, because you will have the SBA's documentation that you will have seen and signed. So you will have the notification number or the approval number that comes with the documentation that will allow you to go straight back to the SBA and ask them for an increase in the EIDL loan. Now, this all starts, I believe, either the week commencing April the 6th. So next week sometime, this will go live and the SBA will issue a press statement and an email that sets out the new procedure in detail next week. So you're very close to being able to go back to the SBA. And in fact, they may well be sending you an email early next week informing you of this opportunity. But if you haven't heard from them by April the 6th, I would contact them directly, Guillermo. Is a non-profit able to qualify? Sunny asked the question, is a non-profit able to qualify for ERTC? Well, it depends on the non-profit. Different non-profits have a different legal status. And so you've got to look at the ERTC rules on the IRS, the IRS Inland Revenue Service website. And again, I've put the link into this slide deck, and I'll mention that when I go back into the presentation. But some can, Sunny, yes. If you retained only a portion of your employees, asked Eric, would you be eligible to claim ERTC for those employees you retained? Or would you have to have retained? No, it's based on the payroll. So if you've retained those employees, it's based on what you paid within a formula. So you would have to claim on the actual payroll that you had against the previous year, the 2019 year. Can a sole proprietor file an ERTC? It depends on the legal status of the sole proprietor and whether you had a payroll. And again, there is information on this point, and it's a complex area, Melvin. I think you'd have to do a bit of research yourself on that one and then come back to either myself or the Small Business Development Centre or one of our business advice organisations to look at that, because it could be a significant number for you. And I think the way ERTC was designed was for these businesses with a payroll. So you have to think about whether that applies to you or not. Marianne has asked about the chart that I showed. It has ERTC and PPP on the second column. Let me check to see if I made a mistake on that. I'll come back to that at the end, Marianne. Thank you. Are self-employed sole proprietors with only one employee able to apply for any of the loans that you mentioned? Yes, you can apply for a PPP loan. That's a very important one for you to apply for if you're a self-employed sole proprietor. Angela asks, I'm confused now about PPP forgiveness. I understood that PPP could be 8 weeks or up to 24 weeks. Of course, up to 24 weeks is less desirable. You get to decide between 8 and 24 weeks. That's your discretion. Angela, and I would say to you, if you're looking to claim ERTC as well this year, you should try and have your loan forgiveness agreed within 8 weeks, the shortest period, because you want to see if that tips over into another financial quarter. I hope that's clear. So essentially, you have that flexibility 8 to 24 weeks. But if you're looking at ERTC, you want to try and get your loan forgiven within an 8-week period, if possible. Another anonymous question, I got an EIDL loan of $2,000. Is it possible to apply again? You won't need to apply again. the SBA will be contacting you to look at how they can increase that sum, potentially, depending on your eligibility, up to $10,000. So if you do not hear from the SBA within the next 2 weeks, I would contact them directly, and they are currently processing applications. So you should keep an active eye both in your emails as well as reaching out to them. I know this is a small point, but I've also had one business owner contact me last week who said they realized they'd had information from the SBA and it'd been in their junk folder and they hadn't realized that. So please check your junk folder. I know it's a small point, but it could be relevant to you. Sam has asked the question, he was an S Corp registered in 2019. Okay, it's a long question. It all depends on the dates. I think you've got to look at your employee retention tax credit as one opportunity. And I would definitely, Sam, reach out to the SBDC to get some good advice on the technical detail, because I think you may be entitled to PPP, maybe. I need to think about that. If you've been declined twice, it must be because the dates just simply meant you were ineligible. But please reach out to SBDC, Sam, have a look at a conversation with them about why you were declined, and then look at the ERTC if you're carrying a payroll. Can a restaurant owner who is a non-US citizen request a PPP? Well, presumably that would depend on your status as a green card holder. If you're neither a US citizen nor a green card holder, then that may be problematic and you may need to talk to an attorney or a specialist CPA to check that through. That's quite a specialist question, Santi. Yeah. Okay, we are... Oh, an interesting question from an anonymous. We are a sole proprietor, but have 2 restaurants and have been told we can only apply for 1 restaurant as a result. Is that true? And if not, how can we apply for both? It depends what you're applying for. If you're applying for employee retention, if you're applying for a tax credit, then I do believe it probably is consolidated into 1. But it's the combined payroll. It's a good question. If it's PPP, it's probably only 1. I'd have to look back at that. If you could contact me on the email address, I can try and research that one out for you. Ethan asked the question, my understanding is that the PPP loan period started when the loan was received and ends when the forgiveness claim is submitted. I would check on when the forgiveness claim is submitted. I think you need to look at the fine print of what the bank has asked you to sign, the lender, and look to see how and what flexibility you have on when you make that loan forgiveness claim. The way the regulations were stated is that you should have up to 10 months to make the loan forgiveness claim, choosing within it within your loan forgiveness within this 8 to 24 week period. Whereas what you're suggesting here is this is almost set for you. So we'd have to look at that. And I would think that that's a very good point to research out, Ethan. Again, follow up with me, see if I can resolve that for you. If I can't, then we'll look at the one of our business support organizations for you. Ashley said Lendio is great. They actually match you to the best lender and help you with your required documents. Well, excellent, Ashley. Thank you for that. Ethan asks, and during the period quarters, we cannot claim ERTC at the same time as PPP. Correct. You cannot claim 2 different federal benefits, if you like, a tax credit and a loan for the same period in time. Donna has mentioned here that she had trouble with the big banks to get a PPP loan, but used SmartBiz, and they were great, very responsive and helped us navigate the process where the big banks only wanted to navigate their website. Well, I'm delighted to hear that, Donna. And SmartBiz, for anyone here listening to this webinar, is another lender for you to consider if you need to make a PPP application. Jennifer's asked, can I still apply for the 10K advance from Eidl? I didn't select advanced when I first applied. I think you've got to contact the SBA directly on that one, Jennifer. I really don't have the detail on the advance information in front of me to be able to answer that immediately. And I think you lose nothing by making a call or an email to the SBA. Angela asks, what's the cutoff percentage of decline of gross receipts that's eligible for ERTC? Good question. So the figures are different for 2020 and 2021. In 2020, your decline in gross receipts has to be a minimum of 50% in Q3 and Q4. So long as you had a decline of 50% in either or both quarters, you can claim either or both quarters. In 2021, it's been relaxed. It's only a decline of 20%, or your business has been subject to shelter-in-place orders that's prevented you from trading properly, in which case you can claim for every quarter that either the federal, the state, or the county shelter-in-place orders have prevented your business from trading normally. And that is a very good way for you to be able to claim the ERTC, even though you may have had a decline in that gross revenue receipts that may have been under the 20%. And that is a big change for 2021. It really makes the ERTC this year so much more valuable to a business because it gives you both the 20% decline rule and the impact by shelter-in-place rules. Now, it could be that when we get to later in the year, those shelter-in-place rules may have gone away, but we don't know. We don't know what COVID may do later in this year. We hope it goes away. We want it to go away and that the economy is fully reopened. But if the opposite happens and the economy has to close down again, then you'll be eligible to apply for ERTC, provided there has been a local shelter-in-place order that directly impacts on your business. So just to summarize, if it's a percentage, it's 50% for 2020 in quarters 3 and 4, and 20% in 2021. Judy asks a similar question. In order to qualify for Q1 2021 retention credit, the quarter's revenue has to be less than 80% of the 2019. No, it has to be, yeah, correct, less than 80%. That's right. Or you've been impacted by COVID and shelter-in-place orders, and that you can evidence that by using the Santa Clara County COVID-19 website to evidence that for you, Judy. Devin's asked a different question about the California Relief Business Grant Program. Lendistry, I noticed that beauty salons are not listed on the qualifying candidates. Please help. Beauty salons, I know, have received, both applied and received grants. So beauty salons are eligible to apply, Devin. Whether you're successful or not, I don't know, but applications have been accepted from beauty salons for the California Relief Grant Program. If you're not happy with this, contact Lendistry directly. They have a call center and ask them that question. But from my understanding of what I've seen from businesses that have contacted the city, yes, a beauty salon business can apply for California Relief Fund Grant Program. I don't have any more information other than what's been published, Devin, on the California Relief Grant Program. Another organization that has a lot of information and expertise on the California Relief Grant is Small Business Majority. And if you want to look them up online, Small Business Majority do a lot of work in this field and are very expert in California Relief Grant. Different question. Carrie asked, do you notify the EDD of the PPP loan when you borrow money or when you apply forgiveness, since it is a loan? Presumably, Carrie, this means that you've been claiming for part of the time unemployment insurance, and for part of the time you've been in receipt of the PPP loan. So yes, your date management is very important here to show that you haven't received unemployment insurance on the same day that you received the PPP loan period. I think you should just reach out to EDD and ask them that question, because they've had a lot of self-employed sole proprietors who've had to claim unemployment insurance as the only means of generating some income. So they understand this question. The general view I've taken is a cautious one, Carrie, that you should declare to EDD whenever you've received income, such as a PPP, but it will affect the timing and the frequency and the efficiency of claims that are made, because we do know that EDD are having to process a very significant record number of applications over the past 12 months. Christopher's asked the question, he says, we use Paycheck for payroll. Do we ask Paycheck to help us with the ERTC, or should we ask our CPA? I would contact Paycheck straight away now and ask them if they do that for you, because they have all the payroll information. If the answer is yes, fantastic, get them to do it. If the answer is no, then go to your CPA. Does the PPP forgiveness timeline affect the ERTC? Yes, it could, because as earlier questions have asked, if the date doesn't normally, the end date for the loan forgiveness normally fit within a quarter period, then you could potentially lose the next quarter's opportunity for that payroll. So there could be a very difficult calculation here where you look at the scenarios. Well, you could say to yourself, I carry a big payroll and this ERTC is uncapped. I can have as many staff claiming up to $7,000 per quarter, up to a number, and I don't have the number in front of me, but if you do carry a large payroll of full-time employees, then you're going to have to consider, say with your CPA or tax preparer or your finance manager, two sets of calculations here in relation to the use of the PPP loan and the value of the ERTC. Jeff has asked a different question. You have a low interest loan from the SBA, not PPP. When will I have to start to pay that back? And is there any way I can borrow money besides loan for expansion? So Jeff, if it was an EIDL loan, yes, because as from next week, as an earlier questioner has said, you'll be able to increase that EIDL loan by applying directly to the SBA. If it's non-EIDL, then you're going to have to go to the lender, not the SBA, presuming it was a lender that you secured that loan from, and talk to them. And that's the key difference here. If it's EIDL, it's the SBA that authorize and manage the loan. If it's any of the other SBA loan programs like 7A and 504, then you have to go to the lender for whom you secured approval earlier. Lee has asked the question, I already applied for PPP forgiveness for 24 weeks. Can I make a change to 8? You've got to contact your lender to find out whether that form has been approved or not. If it hasn't been approved, then you can ask them, can you withdraw that form, and check, of course, with your CPA to check on the regulations of that. But if it's been authorized and approved and signed off by the lender, then no, you can't. Another question on ERTC. Do you base it on when you received your PPP loan or when it's forgiven? No, ERTC is strictly the financial quarters. So today we start quarter 2, April 1st, and it will run to June 30th. So it's fixed. But PPP is variable and flexible between the day you received your PPP loan and whether you're going to go 8 weeks or 24 weeks to ensure that all of that loan content is forgiven. Okay, I've got a question in Spanish that I feel I need to have translated. Renee has asked the question, I applied twice through Cross River Bank. I'm a Schedule C sole provider. They declined twice, but will not tell me why. I would say, Renee, we've had 2 good suggestions in questions that have come up already. I would say, Renee, look at Lendio, look at Small Biz. If you want to look at a local mission-driven CDFI, as they're known, the Opportunity Fund here in San Jose, there are a number of organizations online that may well be taking a new PPP round 2 application. I've applied and received 2 rounds of the PPP loan. Can I still apply for an EIDL? If you mean the EIDL for working capital purposes, yes, you can. It will be like a normal commercial loan. They'll look at your credit rating. They'll look at your ability to pay. They'll look at financial statements, tax returns. So think of it as in a way of a very conventional loan, and what you would have to provide as documentation. But in theory, yes, you can apply for an EIDL loan, but there's no guarantee that your application would be approved. Question again on the California Relief Fund around, we know we've got a round 6 coming up. That sounds quite remarkable, doesn't it? Round 6. But I don't believe that round 6 will be open to new applications. My understanding, and you can check this directly on the Lendistry website for California Relief Grant, is that the information that I have is that round 6 will not be open to new applications. They'll be looking at all the previous rounds, all the existing applications that are what they term waitlisted. They haven't been approved and they haven't been rejected. And they'll be looking to see of those, how many they're likely to approve under round 6. What is the best route for a sole proprietor photographer who has no employees? In that case, if you're a sole proprietor with no employees, you should claim a PPP because that's based on your gross receipts now, and you can claim that from any number of lenders. I normally advise people to reach out to their existing bank with whom they do business and to speak with them directly. Renee asked the question, I'm a round 1 PPP. Please repeat the 2 resources. So you can apply for a round 2 PPP now, and you can also look to see if you have a payroll, whether you're eligible to claim your employee retention tax credit, your ERTC. And those are really your 2 main options at the moment, another round of PPP and ERTC.
Hi, Vic. Sorry to interrupt. We were able to get the question that was in Spanish earlier. So
okay.
the individual mentioned, I am the only owner without employees. Which program should I apply for?
Oh, okay. So that's great. Thank you, Maz. That's apply for a PPP loan as a sole proprietor. Yeah. Well, that brings us to the end of all the Q&A. I've tried to answer all your questions. Some are just too technical and I would need to research them further, or I've suggested you may wish to go directly to the Small Business Development Centre. Let me just finish the webinar by just concluding with some of the final slides. If you want to reach out and get free professional advice on the detail of your circumstances as a business and what you need to think about going forward, go to businessownerspace.com or here, the Silicon Valley Small Business Development Center, and they offer free advice, and you sign a 2-page form as an application. They accept that, and then you can make a booking to speak to one of their advisors, and it's a very good way to get independent advice. Here are the references and links that I was mentioning earlier. This is our summary. If you want to capture everything I've tried to explain to you on all of these slides onto literally one side of a piece of paper, you can find it laid out here on our sjeconomy.com website. I recommend you bookmark this because that's where the city puts all its information in relation to programs, resources, recommendations, referrals, and information generally for small business. Here is the PPP information. Here is EIDL. Here's the EIDL Advance. And last but not least, here is the ERTC. But I do not recommend you print this document because it runs to 102 pages. But it's definitely, if you want to have a detailed conversation, say with your tax preparer or CPA, it could be wise to have a look at this document and just get a basic understanding, and also search online. A number of accounting practices, a number of organizations like the US Chamber, like NFIB, have got very, very good summaries of this ERTC and how to look at it. And that's why I felt that I wanted to bring it to as many business owners' attention as possible. And if you want to learn more, Do go back to that slide that I put up earlier, where there is the opportunity to register on April the 14th for a very detailed look at ERTC rules and regulations. Last but not least, I'm sure you may have some follow-up questions. Here is the city's business email address. Please use this address to contact us. Thank you. My name is Vic Farley here at the Office of Economic Development, and I've been very ably supported by my colleagues who do a great job in putting this together and in working with you as business owners across the city in these difficult times. And I just wanted to wish you good luck with any of the applications you make for each of these programs that have been enhanced with more money and more broader eligibility as a result of the American Rescue Plan, and what that may mean for you as a small business owner. I hope you found this valuable and of interest, and I look forward to seeing you at one of our future webinars. We'll be hosting a webinar next week, and then every 2 weeks on a Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Thank you very much indeed for staying the course, and I wish you every success with your applications. Goodbye.